Hey, this is Robert. Thank you for tuning into the show. And yeah, I hope everybody is doing well and they're just, you know, vibing. I guess we're kind of like at the almost close to the end of the year, which is kind of crazy to me, but we're all just kind of vibing and chilling and just getting ready for that. The crazy holiday season is it is fast approaching, but today we're going to be talking with somebody who you might have seen on a couple of the acting and voice studios, but they're also an actress. They do a lot of shorts, film, a bit of voiceover, just pretty much dabble into a lot of different areas. But this is Allegra. Thank you so much for joining me. And yeah, just really happy that we're doing this. We kind of had a little rescheduling, but regardless, I'm just glad that we're doing this today. So how are you doing?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Robert. I'm glad we could make it work. Appreciate you having me on.
Yep, anytime. So I guess for this year, what was something that you consider to be like I don't want to say the most proud, but just something that you're really the most grateful for since we're kind of, once again, we're almost at like near the end of quarter 4 of 2025. So how would you say that this year was for you in a nutshell,
Yeah,
in
for
general?
sure. In terms of what I'm grateful for, I can't like share a lot more about it because of like NDAs and stuff, but I'm currently working
Yeah.
on a project that I'm really excited about. So I'll be recording that this week, and that will air in the next couple weeks. And it's kind of different from any of the work that I've done previously. So that's super grateful for. And I feel like 2025 in general. It seems to have picked up a little bit, at least for me on my end. I think the past few years, I'm sure a lot of people can relate being in the industry. It's been tougher. There's been, less work, a lot more competition. And so just within the past like few months, I feel like this last half of the year, things have really seemed to pick up. I've started working with a new management company. I've been getting a lot more auditions, more callbacks and things like that. So yeah, definitely what I'm grateful for.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of the same with me because I know that specifically the second half of 2025 seems to have picked up for a lot of us, really. I know that the first half of the year is kind of slow and the second half is when it starts getting a bit busier, but I know that like every other year, like this year is definitely no different where it kind of had a lot of ups and downs and just a lot of hardships that we faced, but like specifically when it comes to the industry and just side of it, but I'm just really glad that we're kind of at the place where we're just making it work in spite of whatever craziness is happening around us. And I'm just really glad that we're just still here, just still, making the most of what we have and not really giving in to like, the negativity or just anything that it might be stopping, that might be, you know, the roadblocks, as we'll just simply call it, like just letting the roadblocks just kind of define who we are, just really determine what our future holds for it because we don't know what the future holds. So that's why we're just kind of in it for the long run and just really enjoying the journey what we can.
Exactly. I mean, it's part of being in the industry, right? You've got to be resilient.
Oh yeah, being the resilience, that's the key. Yeah, but I really wanted to know from you. I know a little bit about like, your little background and journey, but how would you say that acting was kind of like the okay, this is something that I know I'm definitely going to be doing as a career. So what would you say was the moment that kind of led you to just be like, you know what? I think I kind of wanted to really pursue this more seriously or just really take a shot and just see where it goes. Like, how would you say that acting was kind of like the thing that just kind of really
Yeah.
changed your life trajectory in a way, if you were to
Totally.
describe it in
So
experience? Yeah.
I was probably, I'd say like 17, when I kind of fully realized my family, my siblings all were passionate about acting and the arts, and they used to audition for like West End shows and always do that kind of stuff when we were kids. But I wasn't interested personally. I was kind of like off at adventure camp doing my own thing. and let them take the reins because I wasn't a great dancer. And I think a lot of theatre as a kid was kind of musical theatre based, and that put me off a bit. And then when I was a teenager, started doing more like regular plays in high school. Became really passionate about it. Did this one play by Philip Ridley called Brokenville. Um, Loved it. It was a sort of small ensemble cast. I love Philip Ridley's work as well, actually. I read a lot of it. They just put something up with Victoria Pedretti in New York a couple months ago, so we went to see that. But yeah, so it was that play with Philip Ridley that kind of initially I was like, oh, I want to do this a bit more. And then I was in a play afterwards called Like a Virgin by Gordon Steele. And that was taken to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So I was the lead in that. And that went on at my high school. And then some people had watched it and said they wanted to fund and take it to the Fringe. So we performed that at the Fringe, and that was kind of the moment where I was like, hell yeah. And doing it in a more professional setting as well at that young of an age. Kind of the environment at the Fringe, everyone's hustling, you get to see other shows, meet other actors, flyer and promote your show, get professional reviews. And that, yeah, that was the moment where I was like, this is definitely for me, this is what I have to do. And then I went to drama school here in New York and studied at NYU and kind of from there met my representation, and it's sort of been kind of off ever since. And that's how I got into voiceover as well, is by studying it at drama school.
Yeah. And you were definitely born and raised in London. So would you say that, you know, being from the being from the UK and then traveling over here to the US, how would you say that it was also kind of like a major, like, it was kind of like also another big, you know, pivotal moment for you where you kind of decided, okay, you know what, I'm definitely gonna give this whole acting thing a shot, or was it just really instrumental in helping you on your journey, like with your path and showbiz and so on and so forth?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, moving to the States was definitely a big decision. I mean, I think when I
Yeah,
got
it's
um,
it's no joke,
yeah, I don't think I realized like how extreme the cultural differences were going to be, honestly.
Yeah,
Like in terms of how you act and stylistically, that's a bit different. As well as just like living here. I was like, oh my God, there's no pubs. What's that about? I mean, that was kind of a lot of that was sort of linked to when I was a teenager and was kind of looking for that next step. Really wanted to go to drama school. My parents said, like, no, you should go to college and get a degree. And then in the States, you can kind of study acting at universities, which you can't in the UK. They're sort of separated. So that was kind of the driving decision was like the program and the training more so than like a New York or an American based career. But after being there for a bit, it was kind of really voiceover, honestly, that kept me here because the voiceover industry in the States is so great. And it's just a little bit different. A lot of brands cast out here, a lot of companies. It's changed a lot as well since pre-COVID. Because I started working just before COVID. And so you were a bit more restricted on where people were located. But yeah, I probably should have thought through the international move more. But it kind of I was like, oh great, like things seem to align. It's a good program. We'll see if I get in. I got in, and then I was like, I guess I live in America now. And I've just never, yeah, never wanted to leave.
that's nice. Because I know that when it comes to moving and just being in a whole new, like a culture shock type of
Yeah,
environment, it could be
for sure.
pretty, yeah, it's definitely something that you gotta adapt. It takes some getting used to. That's pretty much all I'll say
Mhm.
about it.
Definitely. It definitely takes a lot to get used to in terms of everything, right? In terms of like being away from your family and your friends, and then also operating in a different place where people are different, not knowing anyone, figuring out what your life looks like, having to deal with things like getting a dentist appointment when you don't have any recommendations, like all kind like on every sort of level. It's definitely a like a big move and a big choice. A lot of me was really happy I did it when I was younger because I was like, oh, if I'd thought through this more, would I have done it? I don't know. But now like absolutely no regrets, and would recommend if you want to do something, just you take it by the horns and you do it and you'll figure it out.
Also, congrats on being a dual citizen for both England and Brazil, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, yeah, Brazil. My dad's Brazilian, so I'm yeah,
Okay,
so
nice. Okay.
English on my mom's side and Brazilian on my dad's side.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, that's what I was kind of needing some specification for. Yeah.
Yeah. But I grew
Yeah,
up in the UK, and then just have the dual citizenship from him.
yeah. And you did mention that you trained at the NYU Tisch School of the Arts. So
Yeah.
how would you say that it was also just a very great, just a starting ground for you, just really getting to dip your toes into theater, film, voiceover, so on and so forth.
For sure. So it's split. So the beginning of my training, I trained at the Strasberg Institute, and they have a
Okay.
regular institute as well as like separate from NYU, and that was great. That was like really theatre training, specifically training in like Lee Strasberg's The Method, which is a very specific method of training. And that I had asked to be in that institute. That's I kind of felt like as an actor, that's something that that style of acting would lend itself well to me. And it did. Like I still train with one of the teachers who used to work there. His name's David Gideon. He worked there kind of before my time, but was sort of Strasberg's right-hand man. So I still take classes in method with him. And that, yeah, not doesn't resonate for everyone, really resonated for me. And also method is not what people traditionally think of it as. It's not just like becoming that person, it's a little bit different and more complex than that. But so that in terms of theatre and actually like training was really helpful, but there that was a little bit separate from kind of what it feels like to practically be in the industry. And so it's great to have that base, but I feel like it was the sort of 2 years afterwards that gave me a little bit more of a grounding of what will this industry look like? How will I, make money? How do I kind of go and have this skill set? And now what do I do with it? So there was a program called Stone Street at NYU, and that was a sort of like film TV department. So I joined there after my first 2 years at Strasbourg. And I was only there for like one full semester, and then I took like elective classes. And that focuses on like screen acting, how you can take sort of theatre training to screen acting, which is something I really struggled with, to be honest. I'm like quite an animated and big person. I feel like I struggled a bit to pull it back. And then it was also the business of acting. So build a website, what your headshots need to look like. We would meet industry professionals every Monday evening. So you'd get to meet like at acting and voice studios, you get to meet a manager or an agent, or a casting director on Monday evenings and perform for them, and that was really great for networking. And then they had a optional voiceover class if you wanted to do it. You could take voiceover training, and so that's something that I did. I did voiceover training with Andy Roth, who also does classes at ABS and is great, and Elizabeth Brunel. And they are both big casting directors in New York. Jen Sukup's also a big voiceover casting director. She did classes there. I trained with her, and they helped me build my voiceover reel. They also introduced me to a voiceover manager at the time, and then Elizabeth Buna helped set me up with voiceover agents. So that was kind of instrumental for me. And prior to being able to having my green card, it's a little tricky to work on camera here, whereas voiceovers and on camera commercials there's a lot less restrictions. So I kind of got my start in the voiceover world through that film program, and kind of did a lot of that for major brands for the past few years. And yeah, that's kind of how it started for me. So I would say the training and like that part was instrumental in me being able to network and meet people and kind of build that up.
So cool. And I mean, of course, we got to talk about some of your theater, Broadway productions that you've been a part of. So I will say, out of all of them, what were the ones that really left like a major, just kind of like you really felt like it was big, life-changing, just kind of, experience, like with some of the production, because you've done shows like Time Out and a lot of independent films. So what would you say were the projects that really left, like, just a large impact in your, like, just in your personal life, that you consider just near and dear to your heart in a way?
For sure. I mean, I feel like honestly, kind of everything at this point that I've worked on,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
how, but um, I love working on original content. Like I love working on an original play. The
Oh, yeah.
the actual cast to be able to launch that. So working with I was part of like a short theatre festival with New Perspectives theatre, and it was all lifting up underrepresented communities and voices. And that I was really, really passionate about. That was Candy Girls. So that was the first production of that show. It was, pretty small, basic, like black box theatre, just a cast of four of us. But being able to, and I was working with a director who had actually previously worked with for Playwrights Horizons on Exit, the Ever Oppressive Burden of the Patriarchy was the full name of that show. But yeah, that Candy Girls I really enjoyed being able to kind of, launch that show, and same with Exit, being the kind of initial cast for that is something that yeah, that's always fun, and you get to forge what that character looks like. And so yeah, th those are things I really enjoyed.
Because I know that there are always going to be those that one production that you're just gonna feel okay. Wow, this is actually kind of a little bit more special than I really meant. Like you work on something and then years later it just starts blowing up, and you're just like, wow, unbelievable.
Right. Right, I know. In terms like the most life-changing one was probably the show I did at the Fringe, like a Virgin, because it was the first thing I ever did professionally. And it was also the first thing I ever got paid for. So I remember like you get not much, but I remember like we split the sort of box office ticket sales at the end of the run, and that was exciting because I was like 18. I was like, oh my gosh, this is cool. So that was definitely the most life-changing, but most memorable would be those other couple too, that I've done more recently out here in the States.
Yeah, right on. So, yeah, we could just talk about a lot about the stuff that you've done all day, but specifically, I also wanted to bring up Waiting for Jerry, which was
Yeah.
screened at the Avalonia Festival, and it also got the best comedy short. Yeah, so
Yeah.
just tell us about, Waiting for Jerry.
Yeah, so that was definitely a more unusual role for me, and like more unusual in terms of what I generally do. Comedy leaning, obviously. It was an NYU film, so I met the production team through college over there. And it was, yeah, centered around this girl who was kind of having a meltdown. It was very like campy, very heightened, kind of slapsticky. And yeah, I mean, I remember when I took it on, I got a role that I like wasn't expecting to get. Got the lead in that. And she is, yeah, she's like very big in how she acts, and everything is very heightened. And I thought I was going to be the sort of like cool dry girl, and I wasn't at all. And I was in this sort of slightly like ridiculous costume. But it was, yeah, I think it's one of those things that it's definitely you might have in your head an idea of what you're good for, what you're going to do, and then this has happened kind of multiple times where I've been put in a role that I didn't expect, and it's turned out great, and you just have to kind of trust in the process and push yourself and accept the challenge, and see what happens. And that was definitely that, like a little, yeah, little more unusual from my general real wheelhouse, but turned out well.
I'm just really, I'm just really happy. So I just want to wish you congrats on that.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and for the voiceover stuff, because you've done a lot of commercials, national, just regional, so on and so forth. And it also kind of ties back into the Tisch School of the Arts and Acting and Voice Studios. And yeah, so for the commercials, with the stuff that you've been booking, because I mainly specialize in animation, just like character related stuff. So, but for commercials, how would you say from your perspective that it's been, you know, how would you describe like the pros and cons in a way of doing, getting into that field? Because I know that if you're doing it, like I know it definitely pays well, but what would you say from your experience of working on it for a while? How would you say that it's been really helping you along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I don't feel like there are a ton of cons to doing
Yeah.
commercials. The only thing would be if you do a lot of on-screen work, or sort of big animation work, and you're a member of the
Mhm.
So if you're a SAG
Oh
member,
yeah, yeah.
then it's kind of hard to do commercials because so much of the commercial work is non-union, that would be the only restrictive thing. That if you know if you're doing a lot of on-camera work at a large scale or a lot of big animation work, and then you become part of the SAG, what you're going to be able to do commercially is a little bit more limited. Would be the only thing. But other than that, I don't know. I personally think it's a great way to get into the voiceover industry. I think it's a great way to get into the industry in general. It pays well. You can do it at home. It's flexible. Also now, since COVID, all the auditions are remote. It used to be that everything was in person, so it really was a commitment to do this. You kind of, it'd have to be in I might have 10 auditions a day and would have to be in 10 different places. And now everything's remote. So you can just kind of do it in your closet, in your studio. You can record in there and you'll have at least generally 24 hours to turn it around. So super flexible and also fun and really quick. Like you'll be booked for an hour session, maybe a couple of hours, depending on how the session goes, how experienced you are. Sometimes like I'll be booked for an hour and it'll take 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and then you're like, cool, done. I do miss being able to go into the studio and like have them pull up the art and the references or do some dubbing if that's what's happening. But I don't know. I think I would highly recommend it. I'd also just say for anyone who wants to get into voiceover, if you start with commercial, like a lot of agents, because there's just so much commercial work and animation's a bit more competitive, they will send you out for both. So whilst bigger agencies like CESD have separate departments, I work with CESD and I still get sent out like for video games and other things like that. And then with DDO, I get sent out for animations on occasion as well. So even if you're signed with an agency for commercial work, they will still like submit you for animation work if your voice is right, if they think that there's something that is a fit. It's just a lot easier to get signed initially off a commercial demo because it's much more marketable. There's so much work, but it will only expand your opportunities and your connections.
That's really good to know. And yeah, because like you were talking about, because I know with a lot of commercials, it is definitely like most are non-union, but there are definitely some unionized commercials that you can still book.
Yeah, for
But I know in
sure.
that, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, there definitely are. There definitely are union commercials. They're just less of them, and much more competitive.
Oh yeah. Um, so how long would you say that it took you before you started, booking a lot of this stuff? And then, okay, I just also wanted to clarify, are you part of SAG? Just wanted to make sure.
Oh, I'm not, no.
Oh, okay. So for the process of doing, because I know that you've done like a lot of non-union stuff, and what would you say to somebody that is kind of considering about going union on just when it comes to film, acting, so on and so forth?
Wait, sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, so what would you say to somebody who has considered going like union, like joining
Oh,
SAG,
joining
so
the
on and so forth?
union?
Yeah,
I think the biggest piece of advice that everyone just says is don't join the union kind of until you have to. It is
exactly. Yeah.
so competitive. And a lot of the people then you're going to be going against are those, big Hollywood stars, are the Brad Pitts and
Mm.
Chalamet's and whatnot. So yes, once you have to join the union when you're SAG-E, that's great because if you're submitting for things, or you're sending out your information to casting directors and you're SAG eligible, that's awesome because if you book the job, then you can join and they don't even have to Taft-Hartley you, which is what they have to do if you're non-union and you book a union job. But yeah, I wouldn't say that there's a need to focus on being able to join the union prior to it being the right time. Because especially in the voiceover industry, there's so much non-union work, and even now in the film and TV industry that I never feel like that should be the focus. Um, unless you have to and it becomes time because it's also expensive to join the union. You have to pay a decent amount of money up front. So yes, there's the benefit of health benefits, but until you're there, I don't think there's a need to.
And for just doing the on cam, because you do a lot of because you, when it, what I'm trying to get at is that before COVID, like a lot of productions were in person, in studio, but then like I think we started noticing like a big shift like after, everything was on lockdown and then we started going back to work. So that's kind of something that you kind of touched upon just a second ago where you kind of miss doing stuff in person. So
Yeah.
would you say that, now we're kind of starting to get into the flow of like post COVID and stuff? Would you still like I know you say that you miss doing stuff in person, but for the new online like Zoom, just doing the classes, doing the all of these training that you could do online, would you say that you're starting to adapt to the online space, or is it still something that you're just kind of like, you know what, I think there's something about being there, in person, just this like more,
Right. I
sort
think
of
there's
it.
pros
Yeah.
and cons, right? Like
Yeah.
the pro has been, yeah, I mean, pre-COVID, it was kind of impossible for me to have a life or like any other sort of form of income whilst voiceover auditioning because, you get into work, you clock into a shift, your manager calls you, your agent calls you and says, "Hey, we need you downtown in 15 minutes." And you're like,
My
"Okay,
gosh.
great."
Yeah.
And then, you have however many auditions that day. So you're flying around all over the city, kind of from uptown to downtown to midtown. And that's, it's really fun and exciting, but it's not super easy if you want to have a job, if you just have plans, it like kind of makes you a bit unreliable. So from a practicality standpoint, now being able to have everything remote is so nice because you get more time as well for the turnaround. You used to just get your scripts. Like you don't see the script beforehand for auditions when they're in person. You just get there and they have it. And so the first time you're reading it might be on mic. Whereas now you'll have at least 24 hours to turn it around, which I think is sometimes a blessing and a curse because I do quite well with a cold read. So part of me is like, oh no, people are getting more time to rehearse. But yeah, I think that time to prepare is really nice and makes such a big difference. But yeah, for sure. I miss like going in studio and booking in studio. And I also miss auditioning in person because I like to get feedback from the casting director. Now you're kind of having to, especially for someone who takes feedback well, now you're just guessing on what the direction is. Whereas often if you were totally off base, but they like your voice, they'll work with you and redirect you and get you to kind of to where the read needs to be, which you don't have the opportunity to do anymore. I also think the industry's just changed a lot with AI and a lot of things going kind of more pay to play. A lot of those like smaller budget jobs have kind of been cut out, which is I used to do a lot of that stuff as kind of filler as well as the big ad campaigns. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's pluses and minuses to both of it. Work-life balance is a big plus, but creativity and collaboration is probably something that it gets lost a little bit. But I mean, some projects are still recording in person. I'm in the studio this week to record, and I'm very excited about that. It's been years since I've done that, so I think that might also be picking up again too.
Sure. So explain like acting at voice studios because you did mention, taking their classes in the past, but how did you start becoming like, the moderator or just like seeing the courses and stuff like yeah, so how did just explain to us how that kind of came to be?
For sure. So I actually ended up working with them before I'd used their services. I had someone I went to college with had posted like on Instagram saying that they needed a reader or someone who was confident with voiceover equipment to help run an in-person class. And I'd responded and been like, hey, like I can definitely do that. Um, they ended up, yeah, I was like, sure. They ended up not needing, and they were like, it's paid. And I was like, great. They ended up not needing someone, but I had gotten Katrina, who owns the studio's phone number. So she had then called me and said, like, hey, do you want to kind of help out doing admin stuff with us as an assistant? And then like, of course, you can read on any classes. And I said, like, yeah, for sure. So this was a few years ago, and I've been like helping them out part-time. I like now help out their in-person location in Sunset Park as well in Industry City. So they have like studios and shoots and things come in there. So that's like kind of how it happened. And then, yeah, as I was working with them, it was funny because a few of the people I trained with at NYU, either I would see students in the classes that I knew, or a couple of like a couple of instructors, who I'd worked with, who taught me there, who taught classes at acting and voice, and things like that. And then also my agents, like who I had met before I was working there. And then on occasion, I'd be facilitating a class like with my agent, and they're like, "Hey, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Great, we don't have to have a meeting." So yeah, that's kind of how that happened.
Yeah, so that's how you became like the facilitator. Yeah, that's the word I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. Yeah,
And
for like the
they have lots of facilitators as well. Like I do a lot of the free seminars and things because I work with them separately. But for anyone who just wants to like facilitate and read in classes, you can email your like resume and headshot. And if they need people, they'll like reach out and then you get the opportunity. They'll send out the schedule like each month and say, "Hey, here are our classes, send us your availability." And then they'll send out like what class you've been assigned, kind of how it works.
awesome. Well, I'm not sure if I have any other questions that are coming to me. There's probably gonna be like maybe some. And yeah, by the time we get this, I'm just gonna be like, man, I cannot believe it. But no, I honestly think that like, if you want to get your start in acting, like Acting and Voice Studios is really good. The New York Tish is also another great resource. There's tons of other resources out there. So if you were to like give recommendations to those that are interested or just want to see what this is all about, what would be like the best, places or like areas that they could get
Yeah.
started? Yeah.
I would just say, I think like the main thing from this, obviously, like, I've trained where I trained, but I think the biggest thing is just taking classes. Like, I think a lot of people are kind of like, I want to be an actor. And so they then are like, I'm going to quit my job and get headshots and like whatever. And I'm like, okay, if you work, like, don't do that. Even if they're like, oh, now I'm going to become a waiter or a barista so that I can be an actor. I'm like, well, why don't you like continue your life and take classes and figure things out around that? And for people based in New York, yeah, like there's like obviously a ton of good BFA programs at different colleges, which is good in terms of networking. But studio-wise, acting voice is really good. One-on-one studios also are good for networking. For voiceover, Shut Up and Talk is a great studio. So all of these kind of places, but I would emphasize classes. And there's a difference between acting like technique training and also networking and meeting people and putting yourself out there. Like acting and voice has a good split. Like they've got some classes with like Barry Shapiro and certain people and Andy Roth even, who are helpful on training. But those like manager and casting classes are much better if you're at a point in your career where you're like, okay, I have all my materials, I've got a reel, I'm super confident. I haven't started booking yet, or maybe I've just started booking, and I need representation and like I am a finished product, but I wouldn't recommend like networking with agents and casting directors and managers until like anyone has honed their craft and they feel like ready and their materials are really strong and like they know what their brand is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and what would your last bit of advice be for those that are, I mean, I know you've already gave some great advice, but what would you want to close out this episode with?
I would say like be confident and realize that you kind of already are an actor. I think one of the biggest things that I had realized is I was sort of waiting for this moment of being able to sit and go like, oh, whoa, I'm doing this professionally now. Like, I've made it. I'm doing great. I'm making money. This is what it feels like to be an artist. And that, like, just hasn't happened. Even though I'm like, if I were to look at what my goals were a few years ago, like, I've been paid for this, I've like made decent money. I've booked things for major brands. I'm represented. Like, a lot of those things are goals that I had, but I don't think there's ever really a point. Maybe there is if you're booking blockbuster stuff all the time, but there isn't you can always kind of feel a little imposter syndrome. So I think just like be confident, own that you're an artist, like network, use the community, meet people, and like don't stop at it. Keep going. And the more like I myself, like you can have a dry spell for a bit, like that happens. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, a bunch of connections and people you worked with from a while ago will reach out to you and you'll go like, oh my God, that's crazy. I thought it was over for me. And it's not. So yeah, perseverance and all of that.
And where can people check out just, social media if you want to plug in some projects and just give some last thoughts?
Yeah, for
That would be
sure.
great.
You'll see me probably posting about some stuff soon. You can find me on social media at Leggy Henderson. You can also find me under Allegra Henderson on any of like CESD's website. My demos listed there, the Parry Way, my management company. I'm going to be listed on their website soon. And also my website, allegrahenderson.com. I'll be posting updates and things on there. I literally updated it today. I see you're on top of the facts. But yeah, you guys can find any of my stuff there and probably access to my link tree, which will have links to my socials and everything as well.
Resume and stuff. Man, yeah, I'm just like, yeah, because usually as actors, we just kind of have like a billion things going on at once, but definitely updating your stuff, that is pretty key. So, yeah,
Oh,
that's my, I guess, last piece of advice that I'll just close this out with.
I know. It had honestly been a while since anything
Yeah,
on
and you
has
just
been
don't do it after a
updated.
while, and it's like, oh God, man. And then you kind of get to the place where it's so funny because when you do like demos and stuff, um, 6 months later, you're kind of, progressed so much and you've
Right.
improved as an actor. I mean, prayerfully you do. Yeah, then you just get so much better, and it's like, wow, I think this is kind
Well,
of
that
obsolete.
Yes, I mean that's such a thing, right? Because I
Yeah.
never get any of the materials that I do. Like once you do a commercial, you probably won't see it. Like you're lucky if you do, and they're very hard to
Yeah.
find. So getting
A
that
lot of
stuff
it
from
is Cobra. Yeah.
is a nightmare. So I'm like, my demo is not reflective of
I
most
know.
of what I've done because I'm like, I just can't find it.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Excuse me. I know the feeling, man. But it's like you do a demo and then it's like literally not even a month later, and it's like, that
Right.
could be so much better. Oh,
No,
why
truly,
they use the
my
we could
demo.
be our own worst critics, but
Yeah.
yeah, for oh sorry, you continue.
No, I was thinking about anyone since my demo, I think it's about 6 years old. I have done more work
Oh
since that,
well.
but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or just do like a placeholder demo that's probably going to be outdated in about a year or so because you've done so much more work, and it's like, oh, so now what?
exactly, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Robert. It's been really fun chatting. And like, let me know if you guys have any follow-up questions.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, thank you so much for watching. For my outro, this is Robert and this is Allegra, and you've just tuned into Station Square. And until next time, have a good day, good luck out there, and keep on shining. God loves you. God bless. Bye.
Bye, Robert. Thanks.
Bye.